this is, I don't know, is this a cautionary tale for folks who were pedestaling Liz Cheney, this champion of democracy? She was so concerned about democracy because of the big lie. Understand, I mean, this is generally true for politicians, but for someone like Liz Cheney, it really should go without saying, which is Liz Cheney is doing what Liz Cheney thinks is best for Liz Cheney. And Liz Cheney's agenda is not one that you could possibly share unless you are a deeply, deeply conservative, and I think in some instances, completely unconcerned with the idea of forever wars and denying essentially as many people as possible the benefits of society. I really don't know how else to articulate that in a polite manner. Here's Liz Cheney on with Jonathan Swan on Axios HBO. It is impossible to say what she's saying and genuinely believe it.
You don't see any linkage between Donald Trump saying the election's stolen and then Republicans in all of these state legislatures rushing to put in place these restrictive voter laws?
Well, I think you have to look at the specifics of each one of those efforts. I think if you look at the Georgia laws, for example, there's been a lot that's been said nationally about the Georgia voter laws that turns out not to be true.
But even the Republican Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, Jeff Duncan, said that there was, when this bill started to pick up momentum was when Rudy Giuliani was testifying that the Georgia election was a sham. I don't think anyone doubts that the reason 400-some voting bills have been introduced, 90% by Republicans, supported by the Republican National Committee. I don't think it's a coincidence after the election that this has happened.
Look, I think everybody should want a situation and a system where people who ought to be able to vote and have the right to vote can vote, and people who, don't, shouldn't. And again, I come back to things like
But what problem
voter
are
ID.
they solving for? Like, there's
Well,
not like, what
look,
are all these states doing?
No, I think, each state is different.
What was the big problem in Georgia that needed to be solved by a new law? What was the big problem in Texas? What was the big problem in Florida? What was these laws are coming all around the states, and what are they solving for?
I think you've got to look at each individual state law. But I think what we can all agree on...
You can't divorce them from the context.
Well,
come on.
yeah, but I think what we can agree on is that what is happening right now is really dangerous.
And I can agree with that.
When I think about 2000, think about sitting on the inaugural platform in January of 2001.
Pivot.
Watching Al Gore. Of course, we had won. I'm sure he didn't think he had lost. Mm-hmm. We had fought this politically very, very intense battle, and he conceded. He did the right thing for this nation. And that is one of the big differences between that and what we're dealing with now, and the danger of Donald Trump today.
False equivalence. Go, Sam.
If it wasn't for how much the pollen has taken out of me, I can't even tell you how outrageous what she has just said. I mean, we can work backwards. First off, she probably just coincidentally reminded everybody that when you want to look to the closest analog in recent history as to what happened on January 6th, right, which is where she is in a rehabilitation project, you need only look to West Palm Beach, Florida, 20 years prior, when the operatives that the Bush-Cheney team sent to Florida to stage a mini riot to prevent the people who are counting the ballots in West Palm Beach to go forward. If you want to look for the model for what we saw on January 6th at the Capitol in 2021, all you need to do is go down to 2000 in Florida in November.
They were screaming, "Stop the steal." It was the same people. It was Roger Stone behind that same propaganda project just like he was in 2020.
Exactly. And then on top of this, how absolutely embarrassed do you need to be when Jonathan Swan, who really needs the access to these type of people, right? I mean, to do his job, is laughing in your face repeatedly at your complete refusal to acknowledge that the Republicans are basically engaged in a huge voter disenfranchisement project that is solely and totally inspired by Donald Trump pretending that the election was stolen. I mean, he gives her 3 states and she said, well, you got to look at each state in context. All right. So what about Georgia? Well, I mean, look, Liz Cheney, as wretched as you may think that everyone supporting Donald Trump is, Liz Cheney is the same, except for that one issue, which is solely a function of her trying to brand herself as the Pepsi to Donald Trump's Coke. They're both colas, folks. It's just that they're just trying to wrap themselves in a slightly different veneer. And so, people need to really be careful when they lift up voices like Liz Cheney's, because now what's going to happen is when folks complain about those election laws, other folks are going to cite Liz Cheney, who's no fan of Donald Trump's. They're going to say she doesn't see that there's a problem with these laws either. I mean, that's the way it works.
Yeah, I mean, as Swan was laughing about, there is a complete schism in her logic. That you can't say that Donald Trump was lying about the election being stolen and support all the laws that are meant to prevent what Donald Trump claimed were the factors that led to the election being stolen, because it's just such shaky logic. So that's why Swan's laughing there. And she did say something like, people who should vote should, and people who shouldn't be able to vote shouldn't. That's what they're trying to prevent. What does that mean necessarily? He should have pressed her on it. What does that necessarily mean? The reality is they're trying to make it so that people who have the ability to take off work, people who are wealthy, people who are white, those are the shoulds. And the shouldn'ts, well, say you work 3 minimum wage jobs, you can't take the time to stand in a 5-hour line in Atlanta. Sorry, no votes for you.
I mean, that would have been the question for him to ask, because what is her answer? Well, she's got to say, well, people who aren't legal to vote. Well, what proof do you have that there were people who are not legal to vote voted?
Then you're just backing Trump's premise. And then there's no difference at all, except for exactly as you say, the cola branding.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. That was not to denigrate colas, I should say.
I will denigrate colas.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Heather McGhee after this.